Frontline Records Rewind. Shooby dooby doo.
Yeah, well, this is Les Carlson here talking to Everyday Life, and it has been a wonderful experience this morning.
Thank you.
Being able to come in and see your rehearsals, and you guys have not played together for what, 15 years?
15 years.
Been a while.
at least.
Yeah.
And they were in here today, and
Yeah.
I found myself really getting drawn into it, and it was when you were hitting those levels where you were not thinking, it was like, yeah, there it is,
Thanks.
And so I'm glad you're back.
Thank you.
And I'm interested in hearing about how you got together and all those things. So I do want you to know that in this this time that we have together on Frontline Records Rewind, I just want you to speak your minds and your hearts, and why you do this, and what drives you, and why you're together and all that.
Yeah.
So anyway, here goes.
As time goes by, I feel there is a marathon to run. The same we felt about you and all you've done. The good times brought us together. I never traded for the world, I swear this to you. My hopes and dreams were real, true, and validated. But the past gone and gone, still related. It's all gone now, wrong, never thought the lessons in my life would be the hardest lessons taught. So say it's not true, one day this will be my way. Let my blood be empty, if only for one more day. I right became the thing that brought me to elation, but it's now gone without explanation. A reflection is how failure. A reflection in victory. I know I'll bet you would do. A thought that will too kill for me. A reflection. Another reflection. Another reflection. I stand upon this path, I stand here again amongst the aftermath of relationships that slipped through my fingers like the cranberry said. Or should I regain the promises of troubled past? Perhaps this one moment, the one that will outlast. I know this sad can seem more than big thoughts, so I allow myself the space, time and all. Reflect for a sec, now we don't relate, but we can overlook this mountain, no so brave, because it has its peaks and we've come to ours as well. We'll all lay dormant knowing that we not fail. Now we can no longer look to top resilience. The moment of time will be the break for resilience. It doesn't matter for the sake of struggle. It's better to let go than watch it all crumble. A reflection is our failure. A reflection is victory. I know how big you would do. A thought that will too kill for me. A reflection is our failure. A reflection is victory. I know how big you would do. A thought that will too kill for me. A reflection, a common reflection, a common reflection. Now is the challenge that I hold us together. Feeling myself that this would be much better. Sorry, I'm calling it for half a second. The better you lose it, someone I'll get pregnant. Reflection into a failure. A reflection in victory. And now I bet you would do. A thought the love from guilt to me. A reflection. A tired reflection. A simple reflection.
First question from Les Carlson.
Never heard of the guy.
Yeah.
No idea who that guy is.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good kid from Iowa. All right.
Well, my first question is who are the original guys? I mean, who started it? Where'd you come together at?
Carl
Where are
is
you
actually,
from?
Carl's
Okay,
OG.
yeah, this is Carl, and the idea of EDL, Everyday Life, I used to play in another band called Nicene Creed, and we were gaining traction and mildly popular, and Ted was my buddy that was like this rapper guy, and Nicene Creed was like this really grindcore, really heavy band, and Ted would come to our rehearsals, and we would just hang out, and me and Ted started doing these jam things with my metal band, and it was fun, and we were just goofing around a lot, and we had the Nicene had written a song with Ted called 90s Warfare, and it was really heavy, and we had this real heavy spot, and then Ted would rap, and then another heavy spot type thing, and Nicene Creed had an opportunity to play with the Crucified at the Roxy, and so we performed there, and I talked the guys in Nicene to let Ted come on and let us do our little jam just for fun, and we did, and it was great, and Ted left, and we performed again, and we're super heavy metal type guys, and after Ted left and we performed another song, we had people in the audience yelling, "Bring back the rapper!" And that was the last time. That was the last time that Ted played with Nicene Creed, and so those boys got a little sore on that, and that band was just going through its changes, and I was like, man, that was really exciting, and in the feel between me and Ted, our energy, and just the ability to create something that was actually kind of different, where it was live music with a rapper, and heavy music at that with a rapper was kind of brand new. There was only a few artists that were actually kind of doing that, and so we
Like who? What?
the art. There was actually. There was a movie called Judgment Night, and they had put out a soundtrack, and Judgment Night had like all kinds of different like hip hop bands and then metal bands, it was like Biohazard and Slayer did a song.
A Dinosaur Jr. and Sir Mix-a-Lot or something like that.
Very
It was
obscure
crazy.
bands were being shoved together.
Yeah.
Because this really works. This rap and metal thing really works.
I think at the time that Carl was really seeing that there was something to it, the bands that Carl and I were listening to were, like Mother's Milk from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, or 24/7 Spies, or Fishbone. This very funk-laden kind of, the lyricist is just keeping up with the tempo of the song, and by circumstance it comes out a bit hip-hop-ish, but not so much that you would say that's, there's a commitment to that hip-hop style. And it was a couple of bands like Urban Dance Squad and Body Count, and even XL's record that had just barely came out, and so had the first Rage Against the Machine song, but there was so little of it. It had zero influence in radio except for Rage. Mm-hmm. But Carl's idea was I just want to say it was much more just straight ahead, like rock and roll. Like, this is a good thing. We need to run with this. I actually followed his lead. Mm-hmm. I was still very much doing just solo hip hop stuff, and I think Carl was the one that had this vision that was, there's something here, there's something more to this, let's create.
So back to Carl, because I kind of took you on a little side trail, but it all relates. So we understand how you guys got together. Now, where's Eric in this?
Eric was playing in another band.
A very heavy, like 4-part harmony, journey-ish, like that kind of rock, and I was into all the same stuff, but like Nicene was doing their thing and he was doing his thing. We were all like mildly successful at what we were doing and gaining traction in what we were doing. But then there was a point where it just kind of like stalemate, and we were like, okay, what do we do? And that's really where there was a first few shows I programmed a drum machine. And they took a tape on a boombox to the show and put a mic to it, and he went off and he played guitar.
It was very hard to get Eric to commit to play for
because I was still
EDL.
into that whole mode, like, oh, I'm doing what I'm doing and it's being cool, and then like that took a left turn, and I was like, well, now I don't have anything to do, so
But it was also,
Let's jump in.
but like what we mentioned a minute ago, there's so few bands that were doing it. It's very hard, especially with the management that we brought on early. We inherited a manager from Carl's old band, and he heard it, and fortunately he got it. But it was a very difficult sell when you're out there, because most people relate to, if I like this, I will like this. The whole recommended if you like.
yeah.
That mentality comes from somewhere. But there was so little of it that it was hard to, go to Eric and go, look, here's a very successful formula that's already out in the industry. And we're all sitting here going, man, we have no idea what the heck this is. You should be part of it. No, I don't know if you know this or not, but this formula is really working. We're going to solo in, we're going to solo out. And it was a very difficult sell. And so, like I said, from the very beginning, Carl was kind of the visionary. He's like, look, there's so little of it. There's an opportunity. And you'll probably hear us say this a lot. Create. Build something up. It doesn't have a brand unless it was, unless it didn't exist, then it did. And so Carl is formulating this plan of, here's what I think this new music should sound like. And I'm following along. And then there's this subtle convincing of Eric that it's like, look, we don't know either.
Yeah,
Come along.
It was great trying to talk Eric into it, and like he said, there was 2 or 3 shows that somehow EDL had booked, and people would let us perform, and I couldn't get Eric to commit, so he was kind enough to program some stuff on a drum machine, and me and Ted would just go to these shows, and it was just me and Ted and our tape player, and
Boombox,
we would play.
literally.
And it was crazy, and kids were into it. It was kind of a new sound. And as EDL started to develop after a few of those shows, Eric did play live with us, and we needed a bass player, and I had recruited Orlando Greenhill from Javelina Rail Company. Orlando's one of the best musicians I've ever met, and he was so kind and so amazing at what he could do. His skill level musically is beyond mine. And EDL we probably played 6 months, several shows where it was kind of all improv, and that was kind of the idea of
those
everyday
early
life
shows were
was
just nothing but improv.
Yeah.
it was just trying to take a bunch of sounds from what we would hear through the neighborhood, and we were trying to shove those into songs or to a set. And so we would just do these things with Orlando, and he was so talented. I could just, make noise on the guitar, and he could follow me, and we would just create it live, in front of 50 to 100 people. It was amazing. It was crazy. About 3 shows into that, people started going, play that one song. And we're like,
Wait a minute,
yeah,
we don't
real
remember
good.
that
That one song, so that forced us to actually start to write something that we could perform
So
again.
you began to arrange music.
Yeah.
More.
So
Well, there was
was
one
very
time
bizarre.
where it was super very impromptu. And I think when you go back and you look at like jazz and you look at even like scat, things like that, improvisational is the ground level start for everything that comes up. So whether, jokingly but meaning it, whether you're Bobby McFerrin or you're a Coltrane or a Monk or somebody like that, you go in fresh palette, nothing. And it was kind of amazing, kind of scary as crap, that we'd go in there and go, okay, and that was it. And that's how it started. And in one particular instance, we were at this little tiny, as big as this room that we're in now, church, and we did one, and the whole song was this kind of very slow creeping beat, and all I did was talk about how life is passing you by just sitting on the couch. And somewhere along the line, that became the couch. And we were about 3 impromptu shows into it, and people were like, hey, can you play that song about the couch? And we'd all have to look at each other and go, what are they talking about?
couch.
Yeah, what is the
Are you
couch?
sure you don't want the coffee table?
Yeah.
We're gonna write
The
that tonight.
recliner, we got one called the recliner. It's amazing.
So it was interesting, but that's really how EDL started, was through that journey of just jamming with Ted at rehearsals through my other band, and talking Eric into it, and bringing Orlando in, and performing impromptu, to actually writing those structures of songs, and it was amazing. But that's how it was. It was very organic, or free,
Yeah.
It's a
scary,
really good
all at
word.
the same time. It was interesting. We were talking about song structures, and as a writer or a creator of music, the song "Let It Ride" on "Moment of Clarity." The way that song came to me, and how it, I'm sure every artist has this, but you're like an antenna, you know what I mean? You can just tune into the ether, and it just comes to you. But that song, I needed a song that just started, and that's how "Let It Ride" starts. It's just on, you know what I mean? It's just bang. But that song came to me, and through the recording process of that song, "Let It Ride," is exactly how it came to me. It is exactly what I heard in my head before even touching the guitars and the band together.
Interesting.
So that recording of that particular song is one of my happiest and grateful, and that song is exactly
It's
what
the
it was
most
supposed
pure
to be.
expression.
It was
Yeah.
exactly what it was supposed to be. There was not a lot of struggling and fighting and like, oh, we got to cut this part. That song was just,
It happened.
what came is exactly what you hear, and it's awesome.
Well, let's hear it. Let It Ride. EDL.
So what revolves and when? Lead me to the start of this. When did it begin to become a problem of my own doing? I've been pursuing right now, my life could use some chewing. I never thought myself in the position, wishing still, but I kept on dissing. You got your problems, I got mine, but I'm here for the long. Here before you and God, I was wrong. I can only let you go one more, so wrong. Must have been so fast that I was wrong. Must have been so fast, I was wrong, wrong, wrong. Separate, separate yourself from that which would allow you to sink. In order for this to happen, you must think. What's the cost of self-isolation? Alone without hope and lack of motivation. Have to learn to deal with your feelings. You could not like what they're revealing. Careful what you wish, you just might get. All of this could end up in regret. I can only let this go more for so wrong. Must have been so fast that I was wrong. Must have been so fast, I was wrong, wrong, wrong.
So I was discussing with Ted, the idea of the way that he raps. I mean, I don't really have that in my brain. When I heard it, I was like, when I've heard this sort of thing that you do and that bands have done, rappers and that sort of thing, I don't really just have a feel for it. And he was explaining to me that there's a certain sort of mindset that goes with that. And I find that fascinating because being a singer, a white guy, in the 60s, I really wanted to have soul. Because I just didn't like the real white sounding guys.
Yeah, totally.
And so I listened to a lot of black artists, Little Richard and Wilson Pickett. And, I really got into those guys, Otis Redding. And so it gave me some soul as a white guy, which really...
Well, even Wilson...
But what you do, I have no clue.
Well, Wilson Pickett's cover of Hey Jude, hands down, not just a great cover, almost better. Absolutely almost better. But... It's the journey. It's how you get there. It's the sound, and Pickett brings something out of that is incredible, and like you said, soulful, and it's speaking to so many more people. Whereas when you talk about Hey Jude being sung by a dude in his 30s, white dude from England, all of a sudden it takes on a different meaning, and it doesn't go to the same places that somebody like a Pickett does.
Sure.
And so in that translation, you hear that somewhere along the line, Hall & Oates had to have done the same thing to have gotten where they are, but now they're a staple in their own right. So everybody's getting there the same way.
And you guys have musical tastes that are quite deep, actually.
Eric said it, I think, the best. I think we probably all collectively said it. I know Jim said it too. We never listened to the music that we played because... every day Carl and Eric were coming to the studio and creating something new every day. So we didn't have a basis to go off of. So we would have to kind of let our defenses down and go out and say, and Carl would come back and there's this really great band in Germany. 50% of their music is programmed on everything that is analog. A band called Atari Teenage Riot. But Carl would bring this to it and go, there's something in here that we can use. Mm-hmm. And then I would bring in, maybe like an old Run DMC record, but there's a great sample, or somewhere where Rick Rubin goes, hey, we need a guitar player to come in because you guys have been ripping off rock and roll records for so long. Let's incorporate that. So there were all these great things. And then Eric would bring in trance music and all of these things that he was finding, these really great triplets and solo drum stuff, a lot of drum educational tapes, where he's like, I'm not watching this because I'm getting better at this. I'm watching this because look at how he's playing that. There's something there. Mm-hmm. And again, we didn't have anybody to partner up with, nobody to A/B against, so we had to bring in our own. And with me, I just discussed this with the guys the other day. I almost quit the band because I had no idea about music. Hip hop, it's 4/4s. That's it. All I had to do is rhyme on the 1, rhyme on the 4. If I get technicals, 3s and 2s would count. I can do literals. There's so many things on a poetic level that as a hip hop artist, you're given courtesy to. But we wrote a song, and it was just a solid 4/4 beat when we had originally recorded it. And then we talked about putting it on a compilation record. And Carl and Eric were like, let's draw from the influence of bands like Napalm Death and Carcass and Slayer, where they go into these really quick blast beats. And I'm just shaking my head. No clue what a blast beat was. Couldn't tell you what it was.
You're just agreeing.
And Eric's like, all right, so here's what we'll do. We're going to count this in 1/132nd timing. Well, no, he says, we're going to do cut time. So where we're playing in 4s, we'll take it from 8s, we'll go to 16s. And I'm just nodding. Yeah, absolutely. I'm on it. Have no idea what the heck you're talking about. Got done with practice, borderline tears, sitting in my car going, they're going to kick me out of the band. I have no clue whatsoever they're talking about because they were musicians. Yeah. And I'm just... dude with 4/4s. All you'd have to do is bang on a box 4 times and I could rap all around it. But then that's when Carl would say, let the guitar be your backup. I'm going to play this. When you come with a word that's here. And Eric would, can you meet me on these triplets? Can you meet me on this fill? Where can you get me here? And they would constantly challenge me to make the voice part of it. Don't just let it be the, here's your solid 4. I step back, They do a chorus. Here's your solid 4. They would challenge me. It's like, you need to think about it a little bit more. You need to do something a little bit more. And they both sing, so I had something to go off of too.
So, and that's what you were telling me, that these two guys were really helpful in getting you to where you are now.
If it wasn't for the fact that once I got comfortable being in the band and letting my defenses down and admitting I don't know everything, their musicality came in and then they could guide me. I don't think that there's a lot of bands that made it that were in this whole hip hop and rock genre that made it without having to say, your lead singer is very one dimensional. If we're going to make it through this transition and this trend of music, you got to start singing. And the songs that we did sing, if it wasn't for them, my defenses would have been up and we wouldn't have expanded. It was difficult sometimes. I don't think there's too many hip hop artists that sit down at a piano with Lanny Cardola and your guitar player and your drummer standing around you going, "We're gonna help you sing a 4-part harmony." The heck you are! I'm gonna go out in the car and go cry now. So it's a very humbling experience. But without them, I don't think that a lot of bands would have heard those musical transitions and been able to have done what we did too.
Yeah.
It was one of those things again where it's like, we're creating something new. So the limitations are automatically, they're off. You have no limitations, but it scared me. Nonetheless, it scared me.
So what was it like working with Lanny Cordola?
Oh man.
He was a great dude, that record is very shiny, right? It's very produced when it's all said and done. And EDL, at that point of EDL's life, it was very, wasn't that improv thing anymore. So we created structured songs and recording them. You guys saw a little bit today. It's a little rough. It's a little raw. And that record, it's just shinier than what.
That's interesting. The way
you know what I mean?
It's shinier, yeah.
It's shiny. It's not overproduced, but it's just shiny. It's produced more than American Standard was, where that kind of captured a little bit of the intensity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of what we were doing. The songs are completely different, but the sound of the record.
Well,
Lanny was awesome. It was a trip.
He's a great musician. Really
super talented.
But with his musical history, it's to be expected that's how that record it should have sounded. But I think the saving grace with it, because I had a lot of difficulties. That's just me being transparent. Because vocally we hadn't really been done, or it was getting done, but there wasn't enough people doing it. And I don't think that with Lanny's background, he understood where we were trying to go. We would come to him. It's like, well, here's Check Your Head from the Beastie Boys. I don't necessarily want to sound like them, but at one point he's singing through, a combo amp with a fuzz box, and his vocals sound like that. Like to get there, like to do some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And with Lanny, it's a very polished. You should be able to falsetto. You should be able to alto. You should be able to do all of these things. So you should have pitch and range. Yeah.
The producer mentality is trying to stretch you guys all the way to the max to see what he has to work with.
Right.
But I just want to say this. Well, the thing that is amazing about you guys and what you do, it's infectious for young males, and there's something you can't even define it, right? I mean, it's just like they're drawn like a moth to the light, It's
right.
It's just there's something, and the root and the basis of this group here it came out of improv. I mean, It just came out of, and those are your deepest roots, really. So to try and take you and shine you up, it's a little painful, but at the same time, I don't know, did it do anything for you? Did it make you?
I mean, we being shined up like that was interesting, and every time, I'm sure every artist has this, but every time you go to record or you work with a producer, and you're trying to get the best song, you know what I mean? They're going, and you give that song to the producers and to the team, and it's up for whatever needs to be done to make it a stronger tune. So
Yeah.
learning how to maybe craft the best tune in 2 minutes 30 seconds or whatever we were shooting for. You know what you might need to drop, but you know when you're starting out, you don't know all that stuff. So you come in with like a, you know, Black Sabbath 40-minute tune, and you know it gets chopped down to 3 minutes, and you're like, what the heck?
It kind of loses something.
Yeah, like that. My favorite part is
37
gone.
minutes.
You know, your favorite part of the tune, it happens to be on the floor, and you're left with these other parts. But when it's all done, the thing that is created with the producer and the band is fine. You know, it stands on its own. So going through all of the recording that we had done, it's learning those experiences. You know what I mean? And trying to capture what EDL does. So when we were writing Moment of Clarity, you know, we'd already been through those experiences enough to know what we want to capture in the songs. So that was a little easier, you know, at that time.
So one of the things when you talk about like Lanny, what you'll probably know it better than I do because I just don't have that history. But they say you have a lifetime to write your first record. Right? Am I saying that right?
You have your whole life to write your first record.
That's
6
right.
weeks to write your second.
But because we were doing it in an improv manner, it wasn't until we went in and we did our first 4-song demo with Bob Moon that we collectively said we need to know how we sound. And we were getting great feedback from like artists like Jeff Ballou from at the time Crucified, but Stavesacre. And we were getting great feedback from other hip hop artists and things like that. But the one thing is, as we were playing these shows with improv, we were getting further away from a structure. But when we came right into Disgruntled, after this demo, we had these 4 songs and maybe a couple more that had some shape. And then we get a record deal. And so we did not have the luxury of writing the whole record for the lifetime of write this record. And so there is a lot of pre-production that went into that record. There's what nobody knows is there was a great conversation that we had on a flashback show from Saturday Night Live where they showed the very first ever performance of Fear's New York's All Right. And that hit me because Fear was a very strong LA band. It had a great presence and was very impactful to me. So to see punk rock, LA punk rock in a New York environment on Saturday Night Live at the time, unprecedented. Yeah. So we were talking about that, and Lanny very casually said, if you guys are really trying to embrace that LA punk sound, do a cover of that. We did. Never came out. It's on a 2-inch reel somewhere in the archives, I'm sure. But hindsight being 2020.
So we're not going to hear that one.
Well, one of the things is that it was very, the song itself was very to the times. And in the spirit of New York City, it was cutting teeth. It was very dry, and it was very, very bombastic, if you will. And one of the lines is, New York's all right if you want to get pushed in front of a subway. New York's all right if you have tuberculosis. New York's all right if you're a homosexual. And it speaks very clearly to the fact that there are 3 classes of people that are in New York City. And at the time, if you're talking about Son of Sam, you're talking about, the poverty level, Harlem, Brooklyn, not seeing the economic growth that they had once seen in the late 50s, early 60s. It was very rhetorical from a Los Angeles band. It's like, well, if you like, rusty nails in your front yard and high grass, go to hang out in New York City. And we thought it was very appropriate. Conversely, we had a lot of friends that, in our own way of sarcasm, it was kind of a letter of affection to them, to Clank and to Buka and all these guys. It's like, we love you. We wrote this song. We hate where you live. Sincerely, EDL. But we didn't have that. So a song like Whitey on the Moon was a song that, as we were recording and working on these other songs, the idea of doing a musical version of a Gil Scott-Heron poem is difficult until you work it out. And then at the end, you kind of just can't believe that happened. But again, we didn't have a lot of songs, but we were at least open to ideas. And that was one that came up really quick. And we kind of just ran with it. It wasn't that bad. It turned out okay.
So here it is, Whitey on the moon is what she's saying.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Hey, Whitey, how long are you going to be on the moon?
Yeah.
What have you to say to all this?
I wrapped up at my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no doctor bills, but Whitey's on the moon. 10 years from now I'll be paying still, while Whitey's on the moon. You know, the man just upped my rent last night, cause Whitey's on the moon. No hot water, no toilets, no lights, but Whitey's on the moon. I wonder why he's up in me, cause Whitey's on the moon. Well, I was giving him $50 a week, and now Whitey's on the moon. Taxes taking my check. The junkies make me a nervous wreck. The price of food is going up, and as if all that wasn't enough, a rat done bit my sister now, with Whitey on the moon. Her face and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. With all that money I made last year, for Whitey on the moon, how come I ain't got no money here? Whitey on the moon. You know I just about had my fill, of Whitey on the moon. I think I'll send these bills, air, mail, special, to Whitey on the moon. Whitey. Whitey. Whitey.
Don't call me Whitey, nigga.
And don't call me nigga, Whitey.
Now don't call me Whitey, nigga.
And don't call me nigga, Whitey.
Oh no, don't call me Whitey, nigga.
And don't call me nigga, Whitey.
No, don't call me Whitey, nigga.
And don't call me nigga, Whitey. Help can't even help now. Whitey's on the moon. Aid from my brothers and sisters, how? Whitey's on the moon. Guess we'll just sit by dying with Whitey on the moon. Dogs have better luck at their tails flying. Whitey's on the moon. Fed up as people are, and Whitey's on the moon. Our slogan, poverty or bust. Later to Whitey on the moon.
Frontline Records Rewind is brought to you by Mize Music Group, extending the life of legacy music.
Another song from Disgruntled. It's one of the, for me, it's one of the stronger songs on there. Is Bystander, and that song again came.
Is this an innocent bystander?
No,
Oh, just a
I don't think so.
bystander.
Just a bystander.
I'm very fortunate that these guys have never tried to dictate the flow of a conversation regarding how I'm communicating, singing. Each one of the verses in there are very specific to things that made individuals victims of circumstance. The original chorus was supposed to be, and Carl had written it, was another victim of circumstance, bystander, just somebody who was standing by, and whatever this moment was, it plowed through them. And so first song talks about poverty regarding, welfare and food stamps and free school lunches, which is a very relevant point now in American society. The second verse talks about the media's sway on your right to bear arms. And I have been a lifelong member of the NRA. And during the time of the riot, what I couldn't believe was how the media was very blatantly saying, you really don't have a right to own a gun. Look at what's happening here. But you could very easily put a gun down on your coffee table and leave it there for 19 days straight. And that gun never got up and shot anybody. So it was American public being told, your Second Amendment rights are very subject to position. And then in the third verse, it was just common conversation about the state of our neighborhoods and our blocks. And I got very lucky because these guys backed me on that. And you do your first record and, you know, what are you supposed to say? Hey, I wrote a song about how it sucks to be on welfare, how the only way I'm going to protect my child that's on welfare is by owning a gun. And this society, this block, this community forces the first of the two obligations because it's so poverty-stricken and so defensive and so volatile. And those were all areas that we grew up in. South Los Angeles County area is not exactly known to be the vacation destination. So, sorry, I got it.
No, that's good because I don't know. EDLs we've tried to tackle in regards to the subject matter of what we do. We try to tackle a lot of social issues. We're a very social commentary type band. You know what I mean? So we did try to tackle some serious issues. But that song Bystander was one of those where it just came from the ether and again, how it's recorded and what you hear is exactly what came through. You know what I mean? So it was pretty amazing to have, I guess through my career of writing music, to have two songs that just came and to have them recorded and what you hear is what I heard, just through the universe, just coming, so that's pretty amazing. But yeah, we tried to tackle some serious issues, and I don't know if what we've said over that life of everyday life, if it has impacted anybody or made them view what they do and who they are, and how they behave or interact with other people. Hopefully it did something for them or, and encourage them. But I know for us, I think it's what we were just trying to get out.
Can we hear it now?
Let's do it.
Bystander. EDL.
Telling you that guns were meant for unlawful kill. Be not a puppet to television, brainwash at their will. Bystander. 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 And one day you'll come out ahead. Responsibility is what is keeping the family fed. Strive for the goals that you set for your own self. Don't be ashamed that the A don't put the food on your shelf. Please understand that a child was converted the soul. Stay focused on Christ to stay in control. The bystander. 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 Yourself and think you'll turn out just so right. You're still that child.
Les, the other day I was viewing the Frontline YouTube channel. Did you know you're in almost every Rewind promo video?
I want to be.
Well, you are.
Awesome.
There's also original music videos of Bloodgood, your band, and other Frontline artists from the 80s and 90s.
Wow. Well, how do I view those?
You can just search Frontline Records channel in YouTube.
I'm going to do that.
Okay.
How do we get away with recording Cry of the Lame?
No justice, no peace. Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, what? I like this. What's happening? Tell me, guys, something inside here for all you listeners. Frontline Records Rewind.
No, we're here with Frontline Records, and I don't know. This is the first time we've been together in a long time, and I've listened to Disgruntled, I don't know, off and on, but I've listened to it, and I'm like, I don't even know how we got signed. How do we even do this? Who paid? Who paid for this? What are we doing? So
What is it you keep saying? Who wrote this?
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and trying to
Is
learn.
my
all
name
these-
on there?
Yeah, exactly.
Trying to learn all the songs. It's like, who wrote this? What is going on?
That's great.
But there's some really strong songs on Disgruntled that I enjoyed. Bystander was awesome. Look, Love Lies. Residence was a little slower tune. Residence, Ted, you got anything for Residence? Because that's a heavy tune,
Yeah.
and it's a little out of our wheelhouse of how aggressive it is. It's pretty slow. When we were doing some of those improv and improv shows and stuff like that, we did a lot more hip hop sounding music, and Residence is one of those that came from that time of early EDL, and so it's great that we have that song. It's I think it was on our 4-song demo that helped us get to Disgruntled. So to have that, and it's a beautiful song. It's really nice.
That was one of the harder songs actually for me. Eric and Carl get harmony all day long. Eric can harmonize at a moment's notice. Like it doesn't matter. His range is amazing, and he proves that throughout all 4 of the records. And mine wasn't, because I didn't have any formal training. I didn't have a bunch of guys that are like, okay, 3-part harmony in, we're gonna solo out, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that. So I didn't have that.
So you weren't in choir in high school or anything?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
It was there legitimately, and I'm probably one of the moments where I can say that I just shot my mouth off was they would ask us, how did you come up with this style of music? And in a very proud voice, I would say, if your brother gave you Led Zeppelin and your best friend gave you Run DMC, we're that genre of music. That's the happy medium. And but the problem is that hip hop had been around long enough, and rock and roll had been around long enough that every rose has a thorn. All of these songs, they have a proven formula behind them, but I didn't know that. And hip hop had only just recently discovered this kind of softer tone. You don't have to be aggressive and mean and mean-spirited and talk the streets because that's all you know. There was permission to say, here's a hip hop love song. So when they kind of came together, Resonance was one of those songs where it's like, I grew up in no-bedroom apartments, studio apartments, living with my mom for 4 and 5 years at a time, where my bedroom was a closet. And it wasn't about what the surroundings were. It was about what you made of the surroundings you were. So the value, the apartment itself, without everything in it, has no intrinsic value. Your landlord, your realtors can tell you the value of that apartment in conjunction to the beach, that grocery store, and that laundromat. That's an $850 apartment. Well, that's a lie. There is no intrinsic value to 4 squares with a sink and a couch. It has nothing. There's no heart. There's no soul to it. But with Resonance, it was the same thing that I think Carl and Eric and I, and if I'm speaking for you, Jim, let me know, or not, let me know. But I mean, yeah. Okay, so this whole weekend that we've been getting back together, all I've heard you say is, I live there, I live there, I live there. Gone all around Orange County just saying, I've been there, I live there.
Ever since high school, I've just been moving around, yeah.
See, and I think that's kind of where we all were. Eric is one of the few people in my life that I can honestly say his mom still lives in the same house. That's so rare. I don't know when that happens. And so moving around was the thing where it was like, I don't try to move into a house fast because I just want to get it done. I try to move into a house fast because the minute you can start creating legacy and heritage and, and the kind of things that, you need. We gather around the fireplace and we hang this wreath every year. And, the little Sally's, high chart is on this, doorwell. And that was what I was tapping into, is the fact that it's like, it'd be nice to sit still for a little bit and live in one place.
Wow.
And it was strange because lyrically with Resonance, we took, I one of the many times, I guess, and I'm holding up air quotes here, I cussed because I said the chorus is the place in which you dwell from your living, hell's your residence. And in interviews in the future, I'd use the word hell before too. It was weird how this song kind of was given this lyrical consideration or this lyrical grace from the listening audience that my interviews later did not have that same social grace, where it's like, this place is a living hell. It's hell on earth. It's this and it's that. But somewhere along the line, that song found a social grace. And I didn't even think about that until recently, that, on Disgruntled, there's a lot of lyrical liberties that I took. Like, one of the songs I say is, we wallow in the filth of the verbal defecation. We all know exactly what I just said. But nowhere at any time did the record company goes, look, if you mean to say this word, no, not at all. We're not paying for that record. But Resonance was one of the ones where it's like, here is this ballady, home on the range kind of song. And this kid's taking the liberty of using what I was told in a HM response from a listener is, hell is a 4-letter word. How dare you? And the record company was very supportive of it. Frontline and Alarma and everybody else were very supportive. But if you go back and you look at how I'd originally written some of the songs, I had thrown the F word in like 3 songs because I didn't see that as unsocially acceptable because it was commentary at the time. And, there was a couple of guys that was like, maybe don't. Maybe don't use that.
Okay.
But somewhere along the line, I got away with it. So here's this very heartfelt, home on the range kind of song, and I'm getting away with the use of this word and its intention. And it's very literal what that intention is. And it was one of those things where it's like, I feel like I'm telling the story of every apartment that I lived in and every house that these guys have lived in, and comparing that to this super awesome nurturing environment that Eric was with, because that's where we practice. Mm-hmm. So the nuances in his house, the small subtleties that they took pride in, I saw those in my houses too. It's just the difference is his actually got to be around long enough that it became part of this, family legacy. And mine was like, well, that porcelain doll is there. I'm sure we'll have another wall in the next house we live in a year and a half. We'll stick a porcelain doll right about there too. And so we wrote that. And I think it's the reason why we did it a second time on American Standard, because my personal opinion is the story didn't get told right musically. I think that there was some things that Lanny saw in previous music that had that formula that he was trying to get out of it. And when I heard it, it was, maybe a Rhodes behind it. It, maybe it had more of a Bob Seger kind of sound and less of a Great White kind of sound. And I don't fault Lanny for that. That was his point of reference. But I think I was looking more towards hindsight being 2020, obviously. Looking towards band like Graham Nash, Bob Seger, like I wanted that out of that. I think when we started working with Knot on American Standard, we found that. I think that's when we found that, because then we were working with Gene Eugene, and there was this great stream of artists that were coming through that felt that too.
I want to just say that was such an in-depth journey that you took me on, sitting here listening, gave me insight to your life and where you've lived, and even the fact that when it finally got recorded, it wasn't everything that you just told us. But nevertheless, here's Residence by EDL.
predict. No matter what the city's done, has it really run dry? The town where my grandma grew up is where she'll die. We all have to put the roots down somewhere. The people that move around from year to year, they just don't care. Your kids need to know your house is a home sweet home. To break it down, the thought is detrimental to the dome and the brainstem, where the thoughts cause your hesitance. But home is where you hang your hat, your residence. The place in which you dwell from your living has a residence. Another place in which you dwell from your living has a residence. The place where you grow up is just around the corner from the park. It's just too bad now that they can't go out after dark, because the kids are shooting up the town every day. A gallery of moving targets when you send your kids to play. And that's sad to me, in fact I give it mass pity. The place where you grow up as a kid's not the same city. Your parents' job is to give the kids a precedence. Leave this town, you need a new residence. The place in which you dwell from your living house, your residence. And then the place in which you dwell from your living house, your residence. Roots are your home, don't deny. New ideas are worth a try. In regards, what's wrong or right, man can do this. Flee or fight, pride's okay, but understand, no true person is Superman. Your domain, future tense, your environment, your residence. The place in which you dwell from your living house, your residence. Another place in which you dwell from your living house, your residence. Another place in which you dwell from your living house, your residence. The final place in which you dwell from your living house, your residence.
All right, well, that was Everyday Life, and wow, what an episode that was. I learned things today. I really did. These guys are deep, actually, and their message is focused on people that wouldn't normally receive things, I guess, in this world as it is. But God doesn't overlook any area of life, and these guys are just definitely penetrating areas that a lot of people don't ever go to. So, great show. Very moved by it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Les Carlson, Frontline Rewind. Everyday Life.
Frontline.